hold on to your butts, because this video is going to be about butts. In fact, this is a direct video response to Anita Sarkeesian titled, and I quote, I'm not making this up, "Strategic Butt Coverings." Yes, that is Anita Sarkeesian's new video that was uploaded this morning. The video is linked down below in the description if you would like to watch it in full, although I'm going to be including most of the video in my response to her right now.
If you want to get to know a character, learn about their interests, goals, or desires, their butt is probably not going to give you that information. It won't tell you much about who they are or what they're thinking or feeling at any given time.
Anita, you are 100% right. The buttocks of a woman will not show you her interests, her passions, and her hobbies. However, biologically, scientifically, coming from an evolutionary perspective and biological one, the butt of a woman says a lot about her ability to breed, her ability to pop children out of her vagina, her ability to have thick thighs, big ass, and those are evolutionary cues to, oh, I want to have this woman to bear my children.
But video game designers often choose to put tremendous focus on the butts of certain characters, while going to almost absurd lengths to avoid calling attention to the butts of others. These carefully crafted choices developers make about camera angles and clothing significantly impact how players think about and relate to these characters.
I just love it when I have a woman telling me how a butt in a video game impacts me and makes me think about a character. Like, she's telling me right now how I think and how it impacts me on how I perceive a video game character's butt.
Third-person games with female protagonists typically display those characters in a way that gives players a full-body view. A classic example of this is the original Tomb Raider games, which are presented from a third-person perspective wherein protagonist Lara Croft's entire body is visible. In these early Tomb Raider games, Lara's butt is typically right in the center of the screen, a camera orientation which, along with the sexualized clothing the designers choose to outfit her in, places a tremendous amount of emphasis on that part of her body.
Okay, I'm gonna stop you there. There is nothing inherently wrong with this game, the first Tomb Raider. Now, maybe the cleavage that she has, her big boobs, I can see that, her wearing a tank top. However, her pants in the actual video game, we're not talking about the video game cover, we're talking about the game that you showcased right here, the clip of her, the third-person view of Lara Croft. In no way is this inherently sexually objectifying Lara Croft in any way. Maybe if the camera zoomed on her ass every time she crawled up on a ledge, then maybe you'd have a point here. But as I see this is a game where you're playing a third person where you can move the camera around, you can move it up, you can move it down, you can move it to the side, and simply having a woman's butt, a normal thing on every single person in the world, I'm assuming, there are people born without butts, but you know what I'm saying. This game is somehow sexually objectifying her buttocks. No. Perhaps in the cover photo of the games, yes, but not in the game itself.
In dozens of third-person games with playable female characters, the character's butt is brought to the forefront, and that's where the player's focus is directed. In Batman Arkham City, for instance, the player's gaze is drawn to Catwoman's behind, which is emphasized by her costume and exaggerated hip sway.
The ceremony! The Sisterhood will never forgive me if I am late.
Golden Axe Beast Rider makes extremely sure that we notice the protagonist's butt just before we take control and start playing. And here, in Tomb Raider Underworld, to say that Lara's butt is being emphasized would be putting it mildly.
Incredible. The carvings are clearly similar to early Germanic design, but this is far older than the 5th century.
Let's contrast the way that women's butts are emphasized with the sometimes absurd lengths taken to cover up or hide men's butts. If some of this footage looks jerky, that's because in some games, trying to get a glimpse of male characters' butts can feel a bit like wrestling with the camera. Common ways men's butts are hidden are by preventing the player from seeing below the character's waistline, or employing a more over-the-shoulder camera angle, which has the added benefit of keeping the character's butt safely out of the frame. The most amusing solution is to simply include a cape, tunic, long coat, or very conveniently positioned piece of tattered fabric, which actively prevents the player from getting a clear or sustained look at the protagonist's butt. For the purposes of this video, I tried to get a glimpse of Batman's rear end, but it's as if his cape is a high-tech piece of Wayne Industries equipment designed to cover up his butt at all costs.
Can I just point out how ripped and buff Batman is in this particular frame? I mean, look at those abs, his arms. Is that not in any way kind of sexually objectifying men by how ripped his body is and setting a standard for how men should be perceived in video games? I mean, there are plenty of other video games that do this with Batman and many other characters on how ripped and shirtless men are in these video games. Why is that, and I hate to say this, but why is Batman being ripped and his muscles popping out? Why is that not problematic, but the way a butt is perceived on a woman, that's more so problematic? I don't know.
I like to jokingly refer to this aspect of a male character's costume as the strategic butt covering. Of course, not all games with male protagonists keep the character's butt obscured or out of frame like these games do. The real issue is one of emphasis and definition. A significant portion of third-person games with female protagonists call attention to those characters' butts in a way that's meant to be sexually appealing to the presumed straight male player. In this regard, the way that women's bodies are depicted is significantly different from the way that men's bodies are depicted. There are a few examples of male protagonists who are wearing clothing that calls attention to their butts, but for the most part, men's butts, even when visible in the frame, are de-emphasized. Plenty of male heroes wear baggy pants or jeans, Uncharted's Nathan Drake among them, but nothing about his visual design or the jeans he's wearing encourages you to focus on his butt as some sort of defining aspect of his character.
Anita, this part of the video actually got me thinking. Do you think that the reason why some women have their butts emphasized is because in the real world that we live in, there are women who like to emphasize their ass cheeks, who wear clothes that are tight around their buttocks? Perhaps these people are doing what they think is a social construct in terms of how society and how women dress themselves up in their day-to-day life. I know for a fact that almost anytime I go to the grocery store, there's almost always some woman who's wearing some type of clothing that pops out her buttocks, that makes her ass look huge or tight or a short skirt or whatever it be. In these types of day-to-day interactions with real-life people, would you say that women who wear these types of clothes that emphasize their ass, is that somehow objectifying themselves by simply wearing those clothes, whether or not I notice it?
By contrast, this emphasis on the butts of female characters communicates to players that this is what's important. This is what you should be paying attention to. It communicates that the character is a sexual object designed for players to look at and enjoy. And by explicitly encouraging you to ogle and objectify the character, the game is implicitly discouraging you from identifying directly with her.
So what you just said is that if a woman has a protruding ass in any form, therefore we can never relate to a woman as a character. We can never relate to a character in a book, in a movie, in a video game, because of how her buttocks is being emphasized. Are you fucking kidding me right now?
Strategic butt coverings and camera angles that obscure characters' rear ends are not an accident. They are a conscious decision made with great care, and the flip side of this is that designers often do the opposite when the protagonist is female. This difference in how male and female characters are framed often extends into the advertisements and box covers. Women's butts are front and center, and it's even become a depressing joke that their bodies are twisted and contorted in uncomfortable or unnatural ways so that their breasts and butt can be visible in the same shot.
Now, this is the actually only valid point that you do make. There is an issue, I do believe, with how women are perceived on the video game covers of games themselves. You do make a strong point here, and I actually don't disagree with you because some of these positions do look very uncomfortable.
In contrast, when men are depicted from behind, there's great effort taken to cover up their rear end, often with other images or shadows. Of course, female characters can also be framed in ways that aren't objectifying. A good example of this is the episodic adventure game Life is Strange, in which the protagonist's butt isn't emphasized or centralized. The camera angles work in conjunction with the story to encourage us to identify with her as a human being.
So in other words, if there was a particular scene in the game Life is Strange, which is, by the way, a fantastic, wonderful game, recommended if you haven't played it already, but if this character had a short skirt or anything that emphasized her ass, therefore you as a gamer, male or female, could not somehow relate to her character because of her ass cheeks. This is absurd, what you're claiming here, that just because how someone's ass is perceived, therefore that retains to what we can and cannot relate to as a character. That's fucking stupid. I'm sorry. It just is, Anita.
Sadly, the box art for the third-person action-adventure game Beyond Good and Evil emphasizes and sexualizes Jade's butt.
What? Are you fucking kidding me right now? Are you fucking delusional? Sarkeesian, are you fucking mad? Explain to me in this photo that you've displayed right here on how her ass is being objectified. She's wearing a normal, fully clothed pants. Her ass crack is not showing. It's not super tight around her ass at all. She's just wearing standardized pants. There is nothing inherently sexist or sexually objectifying about this photo of Beyond Good and Evil. And if other people see this so-called sexual ass, by all means, please point it to me, because I must be colorblind here, or I must be butt blind, because I don't see what Anita Sarkeesian is seeing in this photo here.
The game itself, however, demonstrates that the Nathan Drake approach of outfitting a character in clothing that doesn't emphasize their butt, and not having the camera center it or focus on it, can work just as well to humanize female characters as it does for male characters. So to be clear, the solution here is not to simply show more butts of male characters. Equal opportunity butt display is definitely not the answer. Rather, the solution is to de-emphasize the rear ends of female characters, so that players are encouraged not to ogle and objectify these women, but to identify and empathize with them as people.
Well, first things first, we are playing a video game that is not based on real life situations and usually not people. So even if I was to sexually objectify the buttocks of a woman in a video game, I don't see how that de-emphasizes real life people who I know and interact with on a day-to-day basis. Anita, I am someone who can distinguish between real life and a video game. I'm not sure if you can, though. Because it seems to me that your entire argument here is that butts of females in video games somehow makes us as men not see women, real life women, as real people. And this is just simply not the case. And that argument makes no fucking sense.